So Tania Campbell is out as the mayor in Ekurhuleni. Let's stay in Gauteng but move to this focus. Finance Minister Ekurhulene's mini budget in a time of lower than expected growth focused today on easing Eskom's crippling debt, extending relief grants for another year and holding firm on a 3% wage offer to civil servants. He also tackled an issue that has been a thorn in the side of Gautengers for years, e-tolls. And while not saying the controversial, much boycotted Gauteng road toll was to be scrapped entirely, he made it clear the debt will be dealt with at a national and provincial level. But going forward, it is up to the province to look after the road. Let's take a listen.
Gauteng has got to make difficult choices because they are going to take over maintenance. That choice has got to be, how are they going to fund that maintenance of the road? Are they going to keep the toll, charge whatever amount they charge from road maintenance, or are they going to impose another revenue source? That's for Gauteng to decide.
All right, so let's bring in the Gauteng Premier spokesperson, Vuyo Mhaga, who joins us in studio. And the Premier, I believe, is sitting in that council meeting in Ekurhuleni where we've just got word that Tania Campbell is out as the mayor. Do you have any idea of who likely could be voted in from the ANC side?
Well, no, not at all. I think the caucus of the ANC will decide who amongst the council members that are there that is going to come in. And I think for us in Gauteng, for the sake of the realignment of what the Premier wants to do and what he has announced, and to have a political party that shares the same thinking, it is actually quite welcome from the government point of view of the current governing party.
All right. Okay, so we're certainly keeping an eye on that story. We'll cross back live into it, so I might have to interrupt you. But okay. I know that there's so many people watching tonight who are very happy about what the Finance Minister said about e-tolls. He didn't quite say e-tolls are dead. But in your mind, have e-tolls been scrapped?
Well, insofar as it is a debt for the Gauteng residents, for them to pay directly, that one we can actually put it into place, that it is gone. The only thing now that is left is for the technical team that the Premier has actually set to then negotiate the terms with SANRAL as well as the Treasury to say how then can we actually deal with this thing. But for the residents to say they must actually pay for the death in terms of moving on the e-tolls, that one is in the past.
So that road is paid for because the tolls were meant to pay for the Gauteng Freeway project. That debt is now settled. The road is paid for, 30% coming from Gauteng coffers, 70% from national budget. Yeah. Of course, the reality is you and I are paying anyway, because it went from a user pays model, which didn't prove effective because it was boycotted, to all taxpayers will now have to be part of paying for this. What happens going forward? Because that road still has to be maintained. I understand the Premier is speaking. We're going to cross to him live and take a listen to what he's saying in Ekurhuleni, the news that Tania Campbell has been defeated in a vote of no confidence. Let's listen in.
And the Chief Whip, who is the Deputy Chair, together with the Provincial Regional Secretary and the Regional Treasurer, for their understanding, cooperation, but most importantly for fielding this motion and articulating so beautifully this motion. We also want to thank the Provincial Secretary of the ANC, Comrade T.K. Ngezi, who was leading our negotiations with other political parties for the excellent work that he has done in ensuring that all political parties that believe in the ANC vote with us on this particular motion. We must declare in advance that it's not over yet. So we don't want to be taken by emotions and unnecessary excitement. This was the one step of two steps. We still have to fill the mayor and ensure that we win this municipality. So we'll immediately consult with all the parties that supported us, that wants to form government with us in this municipality. The Provincial Secretary will lead negotiations with other political parties as of tomorrow, so that we conclude this chapter, and then we'll then involve the national leadership of the ANC as well, because they need to be part of these discussions as the national leadership of the ANC, so that we can also brief them and seek guidance from them on how to take this process forward. But where we are as the ANC, we want to appreciate our coalition partners for sticking to the arrangements that we made and for believing in the African National Congress. We want to assure them we are not going to disappoint them. We'll respect their existence, we'll respect their views, and we'll do everything within our powers to ensure that in whatever that we do, we consult with them. But we want to assure people of Ekurhuleni that this motion was not disrupting any other thing, but was improving everything about the interests of our residents. We really believe that we've tabled a convincing motion. The finances of this municipality are going through difficulties. Service delivery literally come to an halt, and therefore this motion was not just for point. This motion was not for point or scoring political points, but was mainly to ensure that we restore service delivery and ensure that this municipality remains liquid so that it can run its own financial affairs. And we are quite convinced that we are on the right path, and we also want to appreciate their understanding and their support. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Provincial Secretary.
Yeah, I think the chair would have covered a lot of ground. Firstly, we are from a provincial conference which said to us we must be a caring and a listening organization. And I think the ANC has learned a lot from where it comes from. We want to thank the parties that have been patient with us, because it's not an easy process, really. You go through a lot of emotions, but the parties that are working with us, that are patient with us, that believe that at least we are an organization that will respect all of them. And we want to assure the people of Ekurhuleni, they know where we come from. They know how this municipality was, and they understand where it is today. And I believe that the unity of the caucus of the ANC must also be commended, because these comrades have done extremely very well. And we want to assure the ANC, and what we spoke to even earlier on, that we will regain the lost ground. We're working very hard in regaining the lost ground that we spoke to. We're slow, we're patient, we're focused, and we're shooting at the right point. Come next week, we will make sure that we have a mayor for the people of Ekurhuleni. Who will be the mayor? That will be determined by the discussions and the engagements. And we want to ask everybody to be patient with those discussions, because they're not easy discussions, because there is no bigger or rather a smaller brother in these discussions. We want to make sure that we have a stable municipality that must go to 2024, and that's where we are. And from where we are, we're going to move forward. There are a number of things and changes that are going to come as we're moving as the African National Congress. And I think, Comrade Chair, we have covered a lot of ground, and we want to say to people of Ekurhuleni, change is coming. The pro-poor budget is going to be in your third step. What would have happened to you, we will make sure that it doesn't happen. It will be led by these comrades, including these other political parties that we're working with. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nopala. And tomorrow is the birthday of the longest-serving president of the ANC,
Yes.
Oliver Reginald Tambo, who was buried in this municipality, actually. His grave is in this municipality. So this victory is dedicated to him, that we are indeed restoring the dignity of the African National Congress in our province. Thanks.
All right, so that's...
Thank you. We believe that our people have been facing dire circumstances under the DA-led coalition. We've faced services that have not been happening, waste collection was not being done. So as the ANC, as we put up this motion and it became successful, we believe that our people are now going to get better services. When we come back next week to work with whomever coalition partners that we'll be working with to deliver a new mayor, we want to promise the people of Ekurhuleni better lives. We want to promise you, people in the townships more especially, where there's been most neglected places, that we are going to be there with you, we are going to work with you, and we are for you. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take the questions.
Yeah, so you can see the ANC very happy with that result. But let's continue our conversation, Vuyo Mhaga. We were talking about e-tolls, and I was making the point that obviously that debt has to be paid somehow. But Gauteng's only going to pay 14 billion of it. It's still quite a chunk. But national government's going to spread the load across all taxpayers. So ultimately, it's an experiment that failed because it was boycotted. What about people who did pay? Would they be in line for a refund?
No. I don't think that's what I'm saying. The details of working there's that team that the Premier has actually set up to have a conversation with Sanral and have a conversation with Treasury to deal with the modalities of it. So the important part is not for us to say we'll pay and then we get stuck, because there are areas that we can't touch. Education we can't touch, health we can't touch. You'll know better in Gauteng. Those are the areas. In the middle of November, the MEC of Treasury in Gauteng will then come with a budget adjustment where we can actually change some of the things.
Okay, so the nuts and bolts still have to be sort of dealt
Indeed.
with. So then, does that mean, let's say someone boycotted all along, does that mean they can just go, phew, one less thing to worry about, I'm never going to be asked to pay for any of this debt now? Directly.
We don't have intentions of making people of Gauteng now going forward to pay for this particular debt. That's what we've been fighting for, both from the governing party, including the previous premiers that were here, including this premier, Mr. Panyaza Sophie. We have actually made it that people of Gauteng don't want e-tolls, and we are quite strong on that. We have placed a very strong case to the national government, both the Minister of Transport as well as in the Treasury, that it's not something that is acceptable in Gauteng. And we're quite firm on that particular point. And we are quite happy that today, finally, those struggles have actually bear fruit.
So to be absolutely clear, those sitting with massive e-toll bills, they will never have to pay them directly?
They won't be able to pay now going forward because we have scrapped the e-tolls.
Right. And those who pay diligently, could they get a refund?
That's the issue that I think, in terms of the conversation, we'll understand those details. What
to
we
be
do
determined.
Going forward. Yes.
Okay. Well, it wasn't a flat-out no. It's interesting, though, because the wording from the minister was quite clear that actually it's Gauteng's problem now. So it's your problem now on how it's dealt with. You say any additional investment will be funded through existing electronic toll infrastructure of new toll plazas or any other revenue source available. So if you want to maintain that road properly, which it's going to need, you've got to come up with the money. Does that mean that you might one day consider some sort of toll once more to look after the road, or will that never be an option?
I think in the middle of the discussion, Sally, was about the proximity of these e-tolls, that literally every move that you make, you have to pay. And that was really the issue. So if you have to look at the centrality of the discussion of the tolls, we pay tolls. If you go to Limpopo, you pay tolls. You go to Northwest, you pay tolls. But it's over a particular stretch. Now, you are talking about people that must commute on a daily basis.
To work.
That you must actually deal with. That was really the problem with that particular system. Now that we have dealt with this particular part, going forward, we'll then say, what then do we do? We have actually been maintaining some of the roads. If you look at N14, we're expanding in some of the roads in the northern part of Gauteng. So we still continue to make sure that we maintain our roads. But it was the modality of how this deal was structured that we actually had a problem, both as government and the residents of Gauteng.
All right. Talk to me about how fighting crime, which is another big mandate here in Gauteng. And we also heard the finance minister talk about wanting to bring on board 15,000 more police officers over the next 3 years because they're identifying that crime is out of control. And it's a real concern across the country, but particularly in Gauteng. How could some of that e-toll infrastructure be used to monitor cars, criminals on the run? Is there a plan brewing there?
There's a massive plan on crime in Gauteng. It's actually one of the greatest plans that the Premier has. One, we're going to use those e-tolls because they've got CCTV cameras to make sure that we augment the work that they are doing in terms of fighting crime. The Premier has already announced that it's going to bring about 6,000 police, the Gauteng traffic, to actually, as a force multiplier for the law in terms of putting all the CCTV cameras across Gauteng, because we believe if you are unable to deal with the crime, the Gauteng will be stuck. The reality of the matter is that 50% of the Gauteng residents, which are women, cannot move freely at night. So you are literally having people who can't move because of crime. And now if we don't deal with that quite decisively, we must actually then, it's not worth for us to have a democracy. So part of the issues of these countries, we're going to use them as one of the areas around to fight crime. The Premier is going to expand around the crime in particular. What are the plans around there? We are setting up, an area where we're going to be able to look at the whole of Gauteng to make sure that we respond. And I think the Premier has already spoken about changing the number plates. that coming from next year to make sure that we intensify the issue of fighting crime, because some of the issues about getaway cars and a lot of people are selling number plates all over the place, and as a result the police cannot respond. So these countries will actually augment that fight against crime.
So those gantries being changed, it's almost like turning swords into plowshares in a way. I mean, it could be amazing if it works well. I know you don't have a lot of information, but we're all really concerned about this alert that came from the US Embassy this afternoon. It's talking about a warning, intelligence warning they've received of a possible terror attack in the Sandton area this Saturday. We know that Gay Pride is happening this Saturday in that exact area near Sandton City. Do you know who's going to comment on it and when? How is it being dealt with by the government in South Africa?
Well, of course, naturally, first as a resident of Gauteng, and speaking on behalf of people of Gauteng, we are naturally a bit worried about that information. But in terms of the comment on that, it's actually the national government that normally actually deals with those. But I think it will either be with the police or the state security agency that can speak about that. The only thing that we can say is, of course, anything of a threat of that magnitude is a worry to us as ordinary people in Gauteng. Hopefully, the national government will be able to give us the direction.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for coming in to chat to us. Vuyo Mhaga, who speaks, of course, for the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi.